Hello and welcome to Old World Wednesdays. Today we are talking about how 1.5 has changed the game. Specifically, has it made Empire the best faction in the game, Tom? Because you've been playing a couple games with Empire. Um, we know the answer is no, but seriously,
No, the answer was always yes. Empire are the finest faction in the land. So I'm not having any of that before we start saying no.
Maybe you'll present the case and I'll be devil's advocate, maybe something like that. But we're going to chat about 1.5. We're going to talk about the big changes and what it's done for factions that were struggling, specifically the Empire, but also looking a bit further afield. So, tankards ready, drinks are the ready. It's Old Old Wednesday. Well, Tom, I am very jealous that you have been playing some games. You've played 2 games in the space that I've played none. I was going to play one this week, and it got cancelled, unfortunately. But I am playing next week. Me and Dan are going to play next week. So why don't you just give us an overview of what you've been up to?
Well, me and Dan, we found a local games club that's fairly local to us both. We've been travelling down kind of every other Sunday at the minute to go and play some Old World Fantasy or Old World Warhammer the Old World, and it's been absolutely brilliant fun. But yeah, my goodness, has the edition changed significantly? I think is the polite way of saying it. It's been a significant shift.
So you have been, you've been painting up your Empire for our project when we go away in October. Dan has had High Elves. Feels like Dan's High Elf army is like as old as High Elves are in the lore. He's always had High Elves, for a long, long time. So you guys have kind of paired up in the past before. You've faced Dan's army multiple times through all the different iterations when it used to, back in 8th where it would like outshoot my Wood Elf army or, the different kind of variants that it took. So how did you feel your games have gone since 1.5 compared to when you played in previously?
Wow, it's always a good laugh playing Dan. I think whatever we're playing is good fun, and this is just enhanced the fun. Let's say it like that. Neither of our lists are very competitive. Dan's usually takes a big sun dragon, like the baby dragon with a sun mage or the level 2 on back, which currently isn't amazingly powerful. The Lothar and Seaguard do what Lothar and Seaguard do. They shoot, they stand there with a big shield and a big spear, and they take your charge quite well. And his chariots just dance around the table, being a nuisance. But the big change for me has to be like the most 2 really important notes, I think, when I've played these games. One thing is how armor now interacts with the game. Your lowly state troop having a light armor shield and a hand weapon to be in a 4-up armor save is ridiculous, considering armor penetration isn't that prevalent anymore. If it was 8th edition, you'd cleave through it no problem, but it's not based on that strength.
Strength thinking about that, you're like your lowly dude is still going to get an armor save against the lance. It's not going to go straight through because it's always used to be, your toughness 3 infantry. You'd roll up with your cavalry, you'd be like, yep, 2s to kill, but it's not now. It's 2s and then a 6-up.
2s, and you get a fairly formidable save. But then the adverse is true in when you lose that combat with the cavalry. You then fall back to not using your lance and using your hand weapon and shield, and you become an immovable object. You just stand there and soak damage until the end of the game, which is great fun. But to be back on track with infantry, my goodness, it's gone from being something that you took as a tax, I think, from most armies, but now it's got some real staying power.
Yeah,
especially. I just want to say, Dan, we used a lot of low linear obstacles in our last game, and they were a real hoot. But we'll talk about more of that later, I think.
So just whilst we're kind of on track with changes to infantry rules, yeah, the armor save, like, it does really elevate those units. And I'm pleased that you've experienced that and you felt like your state troops are doing a bit more, and punching above what they would have done. How did you find the combat rares interacted? Because now you get +1 for outnumbering, and you will only get close order if you've got like unit strength 10. So if like if something smaller goes into you, did that come into play at all?
Yeah, quite a bit. So in a few videos ago, we talked about the challenge interaction with dragons, and almost every game, me and Dan have played 2 games. That dragon's charged in, done 1 wound to my champion, and then I've combat resed it out. And because it's a baby dragon, I've then followed up and been able to do damage with my halberds.
Oh yeah, because you've got halberd. So when if it falls back in good order and you pursue, you count as having charge, so you get AP2. Oh my goodness!
Yeah. Receive the charge, form testudo, stand there and wait with our hand weapon and sword, sword, and then charge up with big old halberds and start chopping.
Oh, that's brilliant! And yeah, because you can change your formation, so you can like wait to receive the charge with your shield. And they said, like put it away, get out your halberd, and then start hack. Oh my, yeah, that is really cool.
There's an unsung hero in my opinion, and I like it because I think Old World, when you get an opportunity to roll a load of dice, you have an opportunity to do an awful lot of damage. Don't know what it is, but Spearmen and the Lothran Sea Guard when they receive the charge, they are really quite cool. I've charged in a unit of knights. They got quite lucky, pinging one off with stand and shoot, and then they attacked me back with 3 ranks full of elves. And one of them or 2 of them's bound to get through when you've got a 2 3-up save. Like, you're bound to roll a 1. If you put a razor banner in there, I don't think I'd be charging. Really don't think I would.
Do high elves not fight an additional rank this edition?
No, that was an 8th edition. So they get compressive combat, don't they? And then they get their additional attack rank from thrusting spears for 3 ranks.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it with Eternal Guard, because Eternal Guard are AP1 naturally as well, and then elves are really quick, aren't they? So like you'll get +1 AP for being charged if you've got an Azrai spear, and then you get elven reflexes, and you're a point of initiative higher anyway, so you've got that +3. So if you get charged by a human on a horse, the spears hit them at the same time they hit you.
Yeah.
And their weapon skill 5 AP1.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's just mutually assured destruction, that is. That's brilliant. Raise a banner in there as well.
An Eternal Guard probably costs the same as like an Empire Knight, to be honest. They're really expensive.
Like 20 something points, man.
Nastily expensive.
But what it is, like, I think when you play in the objective game and you start introducing the objectives that the new book brings in, having a unit like that sat on an objective, if you can get some buffy spells on, Mama Maglione, let's get that going.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking just before we started recording about how it impacts armies a bit wider than just the Empire, and we were looking specifically at the new regen rule. For those of you watching who don't know, regen, it used to be worded as an additional armor save, and you would take this armor save after you'd failed your normal save and your ward save, and you take as many as wounds had gone through. But it was a little bit clunky, the word. And basically, with a regen save, you take as many regen saves as wounds have gone through. So, like, if you took a wound that did D3 damage, you just take 1 armor save and then take D3 damage. But with a regen, you could take up to 3 regens. So to change the wording on that, they've said, when you take a wound and one has gone through all your saves, you can then make a regen save. But what that means is, when undead crumble from losing combat, they then get an additional save because they've lost a wound. So we were just looking at Graveguard, weren't we? Which are heavy armor and can have a shield and a hand weapon. So it gives them a 3-up save. And then you can put a magical banner in the unit for 50 points that gives them a 5+ regen. So they get 3 up, 5 up, 5 up, basically.
I mean, I think it's worthwhile pointing out that if you're not up to date with the FAQ, that 3 up save comes from that rule that was added. I think it's like parry, something like that, where if you're using a hand weapon and shield in combat, you get an additional +1. Infantry's to a maximum of 3+, is it not?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So,
which is nuts.
Graveguard are also toughness 4 as well.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't even notice that when I was looking it up.
They're just brilliant. So,
right. Wow.
Yeah, they're 11 points a model.
There is a meticulously resculpted Graveguard army that you can probably bring in from the Age of Sigmar range.
Yeah, so it means a lot for infantry. I think it means more for undead infantry. It's funny because there's a couple of people doing like tier videos after 1.5, and it's just like, yeah, we know where this is going. Undead at the top, and then it's kind of similar, I think, but you have to look at your builds now. So like you said, the dragon, it doesn't go into a big block and annihilate it. It needs to pick its targets now. It needs to go into. These guys don't have a champion, really, to be honest. It needs to be a bit more savvy. It still is, we talk quite a lot before about units that hold points that your army will never get. Like you're not giving up 500 points to your opponent if you play well with the dragon. But equally, to win a game, you have to deal damage, and it's not the damage dealer that it was anymore. It may well, I would think now, struggle to kill its points, but it will hold them.
I think what would be a good thing to do if you're going to run a dragon, run something or give it a weapon that does multiple wounds, because those multiple wounds generate additional combat res. So it's something I did against Dam. I charged my Grandmaster and it had the giant blade, which has got multiple wounds too. So I caused like 4 or 5 wounds additional just from generating the additional wounds, which was a really big swing in the combat res because I wasn't winning that combat until my Grandmaster struck.
I've been thinking about multi-charging, so I've got a list that I've written that I was just playing around with list writing, where there's like a dragon and the wild riders go up together, and then the plan is they both charge simultaneously, and then when a challenge comes, you can accept it with the wild hunter, and then have your dragon do all its attacks. So if you've got something, someone on an eagle, someone who can fly with a flying carpet or whatever, whatever shenanigan you've got, if you can go in simultaneously, there's someone there to take that. That's another way.
Yeah.
But then you're investing, 500 points in a dragon, then another X amount of points in a unit to make the dragon effective.
Yeah, but I think the multi-charging thing, from my experience, limited experience from the 2 games, is very necessary. Like a unit of knights isn't going into a unit of infantry now and taking them off. You need to be hitting them in the flank, in the rear, with something else to really get the damage through. And I think if you're investing 500 points in a dragon, what's another 120 on a unit of wild riders, or however many points they are?
Okay, why don't we talk about your favorite thing in the game? The thing that you're always talking to me about off camera is low linear obstacles.
You know what? I love a low linear obstacle. So we had a really great opportunity in this game, and I'm going to ping down a photo, and hopefully we might be able to edit it in just for your pleasure. There was a lovely low linear obstacle right at the front of my battle line, right as I deployed my Hellblaster, and I thought, it's too good for me not to move up and hide behind the low linear obstacle and have my Hellblaster pointing through the wall as if it was like a tank hunter waiting to just spray and pray at whatever comes within range. We played with quite a lot of them in our last game, and they had a really, really profound effect. So one thing I noticed when I was reading the rules and how some things interact with supporting attacks is in the FAQ, it states that if you charge a unit that's defending a low linear obstacle, you don't get impact hits because you're not technically in base combat. And that's got a really weird interaction with supporting attacks. So if your dragon, Dan's dragon, charges my unit of halberdiers that's defending a low linear obstacle, he can only make one supporting attack. So we threw a load down just to see what was happening.
Yeah, because you're not technically in base to base, so you make a supporting attack like you would if you were on the front rank, but out not actually touching the unit. Yeah.
Very interesting. And it was a great spectacle because our infantry were holding like points of interest on a battlefield and genuinely trying to do what your infantry wants to do and hold a line, hold something defendable. But yeah, love low linear obstacles. Really interesting point to the spell.
Earthen Ramparts.
Earthen Ramparts is the one.
So I read Earthen Ramparts.
Do it.
Until your next starter turn sub-phase, the target friendly unit gains a 5+ ward save against any wounds suffered and counts as being behind a defended low linear obstacle if charged. However, whilst this is in play, the unit cannot march or charge.
Well, that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
Yeah, so you don't get stomped and you don't get any impact hits.
If I've got my 3 ranks, my Griffin banner, my defender a low linear obstacle, my closed order, do it. Charge your dragon in all day, every day. I'll eat your 1 wound. I don't even have to offer up my champion. But yeah, it's just one of those things. I think it's quite funny. But you know, it's like this is really how me and Dan like to play games. I like putting loads of terrain on the board. It doesn't make a great deal of sense. It's a bit clunky with how the rules work, but it just makes the game really fun because weird things happen. You get really weird interactions, and it looks beautiful.
Yeah. So I think probably the last thing I wanted to ask you was about how Magic interacted, because High Elves are kind of notorious for being good at Magic. Dan wasn't taking a particularly overpowered mage, but how was it?
Dan, I think, casted 1 spell each of the times we played, and that was I want to say it was the Mystical Pathways. It may not have been. It's the one that gives you an additional move. Yeah. Fairly ineffective. Dan had Fireball, which
Arcane Urgency it would have been then.
Arcane Urgency, pardon me, yes, absolutely. So Dan had Arcane Urgency, which he cast once a game because he was struggling to cast it due to the high casting value. Dan also took Fireball, which he struggled to cast also because I was -1 magic res across almost all of my army.
It's interesting there because I noticed straight away you were like, he could cast the spells that affected him, but if you are going to take, we spoke before about taking Obsidian Lodestones and taking Witch Hunter's Wards and taking items that give you this magic res, so that blocked him from being able to cast offensive magic then.
Yeah, which was huge because against a Fireball, my Empire really like susceptible to being burned alive. Let's be honest. Against someone casting Arcane Urgency, they don't really care.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? I hadn't really considered that tilt, that actually maybe your buffs or your enchants, they're called, aren't they, and things like that might be your more reliable spells now, whereas something you're going to cast against your opponent, the Witch Hunter's Ward, is -2, isn't it? It's magic res 2. Obsidian Lodestone, you can take as many as you want. Dwarves, have got inbuilt magic resistance. There's, magic resistance out there for anybody who wants it. I'm designing lists and I think, right, this is a unit that I don't want to just get spelled off. So let's just lump an Obsidian Lodestone onto it. Nearly said Oblivion Lodestone, and I still got the old Tamriel on the mind.
He loves it.
But yeah, that's interesting that offensive magic was like a lot less prevalent.
But then I think that's because the offensive magic was where all the shenanigans were happening, wasn't it? Like, I think as I said in one of the other videos, Dan, it's a delicate ecosystem. I'll take my Witch Hunter's stone, Witch Hunter's ward, get myself a -2 res. Dan might stop taking wizards. When Dan stops taking wizards, I'll stop taking the 40 points on the wards, and then Dan takes a wizard again.
Yeah, I think there are funny ways to exploit this. We talked about there's a couple items that, like for dispelling, they roll. The Wood Elves have got one, haven't they? And there's the Infernal Puppet as well. But the Wood Elf one, you roll 3d6 and discard the lowest when you're going to dispel, which has become really big now. But there are other ways. So I was looking at Empire and spell casting, because you could take a level 4, and there's like a wand that you can give them that gives them +1 to cast from Demonology and Necromancy. But then there's something else you can give them, which they can also take. There's like one of them is extremely common, where it gives them +1 to cast if it's an assailment or a magic missile, and the signature from Demonology is a magic missile. So all of a sudden, your level 4 goes back to having +4 to cast, and your level 1s and 2s are only like, even your level 4 is only +2 to dispel. So then you get that gulf opening up again. So that particular build, there will be particular builds that are actually quite strong. You've got to invest quite a lot, and it's one spell, but still, it's still 2d6 strength 4 hits.
2d6 strength 4 AP1, which is powerful. And with all of those additionals to cast, you're going to be getting it. Could it be in a game of trying to take objectives, ping off the last wound? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, worth investing in, perhaps.
So there are still ways of doing it, and there are still builds. I don't know how common they will be, because you are going to go against a unit that, if it's got the Witch Hunter's Ward, I think it's like 20 points to Witch Hunter's Ward.
Yeah, 20 points for a -2 magic res.
Yeah, so then you've invested all these points. You've had to take a level 4, then you've invested all these points to get your additional +4 to cast, and then you target that unit, and for 20 points you just knock straight down 2 levels again.
Yeah.
So I don't know how common it will be, but I'm just trying to say that there are still ways to force through some spells.
So that build you're talking about then, Dan, is 180 points. Wizard, 210 points for that wizard. To get an additional +1 when casting an assailment, and a +1 when casting anything from Demonology, Dark Magic, or Necromancy. It gives you another 50 points to play with to do something.
I'm not sure it's worth it, to be honest, because you've then got to still roll the spell, and so it's not guaranteed. And really, the reason why you were taking a level 4 before was because otherwise you'd have no say, because of the big disparity. Whereas now, I don't think you need to have a level 4 to have a say in Magic, because nobody really is going to have as big a say as they used to, if you know what I mean.
No. For how many points is it for just to do it on a level 2? Because you'll get those on a level 2. You get those spells through on a level 2 with that.
I don't think you can do it with the cost of the items.
Yeah, you can.
Oh, you can, because 50 points. Yeah, could do.
What's it? 140 points, which.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll probably take a punt at 140.
Yeah, why not? Strong.
Yeah, I think it's a shame that Magic isn't as cool, or isn't. I don't know if cool is the right word, but it's not as prevalent, that you're not seeing as much Magic. Because one of the things, talking to my cousin Tom, like he's like huge into the old world at the minute. He's trying to plan going down to Warhammer World and play a game and all this kind of stuff. And he's like loving it, and he's enjoying it more than Age of Sigmar, which has been his game. That was his war game. He started playing war games when Age of Sigmar came out. So, and one of the things he really likes about it is that magic is in every phase of the game, and there's something going on, and that you can do in the movement phase, and the combat phase, and the shooting phase, and he really likes that, and I really like that as well. And I think that it felt like it was in a magical world where wizards were interacting with the game quite a lot, whereas now, I just hope it doesn't take that away from it, if you know what I mean.
Perhaps. I think the most important thing is to say that is great. Love that Tom's enjoying this game as much as he is Age of Sigmar. But if I was to put my little hat on and say, do you reckon it could be a narrative reason? If we're going to be focusing on the Empire prior to the colleges of mages, maybe that magic's just not supposed to be as disciplined as it was. And maybe we'll open up that door in later editions.
I like to think, I don't think magic was too powerful, to be honest. I think maybe some spells needed toning down. And I think some of the things that they did with where you dispel vortexes, you measure from the vortex, not the wizard, that was like a good change. But I don't think we weren't in a position like we were in the end of 8th edition, where you cast a spell and take off someone's entire army, which you did to me.
Yeah, but then I think a lot of it has to do with you're dealing with like spaghetti code game, aren't you? Really, like just if you think go prior in this video, that change to regen, which you think is quite innocent, quite harmless, a change into the way of rules read. It's a massive implication. Like, maybe they just didn't know. Maybe they just didn't think. And there's weird interactions happening.
Well, I think the regen thing, I think you're right, actually. I think they were caught out. They tried to clarify that it's when you take a wound, you roll as many dice as there are wounds. And then I think they got caught with their pants down a bit with that one. But I think with magic, you would hope that there's, I know there are playtesters out there.
Yeah, but maybe there was just a weird interaction you only see at the top table, or there's just weird interactions that we're not seeing because we're not playing a game enough. That this was like the easiest, the path of least resistance to change in magic until they can really figure it out.
I suppose that is a more balanced approach, isn't it? I mean, it's very easy to just take the boo Games Workshop kind of attitude, I suppose, and not actually consider, these people that are invested in the game, love the game, and want to see what's right for it, and are trying to balance it. But for me, I don't think magic was really, really terrible, and I liked that there was more of it. And the spells are toned down. You don't get a purple sun. You don't get those kind of spells. So I don't know. That's my 10 cents on my 10 pennies on the matter. But I'm pleased that you're feeling that the game is more fun. Infantry have got a better say, because we've been saying this from day one, that games of Warhammer the Old World haven't looked like Warhammer, haven't looked rank and flank. It's been skirmishers and skirmish cavalry and big monsters, and you might as well be looking at a table of Age of Sigmar, but just change them on square bases. Whereas now, the changes do make the game look like what we think it should look like.
Yeah, well, you've seen some photos from mine and Dan's game. I think that very much looked like Warhammer Fantasy as I knew it. I think that's when I was like beaming the most. I was like, this is it. We could have just set up and not done anything, but that was it. It looked like Warhammer Fantasy. And I'm really hoping that's where we stay. They keep on and just refine the other bits and maybe release an actually updated rulebook that reads well. You're on. Winner.
I know, because Dan was saying, wasn't he? He was like, do you think they'll reprint the rulebook with this FAQ in it? And I was like, what's the point? Because you'll never find anything in there anyway. They can change all the words they like. You're not finding your rules anywhere in this book. It's just, where you won't see now because I've got the background off, but wherever you look in this book, you cannot find what you were looking for. So it doesn't matter. Anyway, sorry, I got a bit excited then.
Animate.
My last question to you is, what are Sword Masters like fighting in 2 ranks?
Devastating. Absolutely terrifying. They do everything that you'd expect lore masters to do, not lore masters, sword masters of Hoth to do from the lore. Like they charged into my infantry block. This is the most recent game. They charged into my infantry block. My halberdiers held the line. They switched to hand weapon and shield, and they put up a valiant defense and won the combat. But they got a bit eggy, and they're like, right, we're going to follow up. We're going to go in and do it again. And they got torn to pieces. It wasn't even a contest. Lovely.
Yeah, Darren's just there. Like, I just get my bucket for attacks and just
terrifying. As it goes back, I think I said it before we started recording. Weight of dice make a difference. Charging into spearmen with cavalry makes a huge difference. They're fighting in 3 ranks. You're bound to lose 1 or 2 models. That's all you need.
Yeah. All right. Well, of course, we want to hear from you guys. Have you guys been playing 1.5? What have you thought about it? How have the changes gone? What is your most heroic moment? That's another thing as well. Have you been charged by a dragon? Have you been defending a low linear obstacle? Have you cast any spells? Just let us know, because we really want to know. And I want to read all the comments and hear about people's stories and hear about the triumphs and the stuff. Are you disappointed in Magic like I am? Let's know. Let's get talking. I'm playing a game next week. I might well play 2 at this rate, which would be great because I want to play a game with the Wood Elves. I want to play a game with the Empire. So yeah, we'll be back after that. So take care, everyone, and happy 1.5-mas to you all.